The day was February 19th, 2016, and little old 15-year-old me had a game preloaded on his 3DS that was finally about to unlock, expecting it to be pretty good since he thought the last entry was pretty fun. However, what he didn't expect was for one character to quickly become one of his favorite characters of all time. Of course, I'm talking about Perry, but there's also a character I like even more, that being the one and only Charlotte, a character that is sadly often greatly reduced in discussions, since in most contexts people just talk about her design and how she makes such a good backpack for Xander, much to my dismay. However, as the title implies, I think she's worth more than that. You see, in 2015, Maeda released this, Fates, one of his most accomplished games, but one of his best characters, Charlotte, a character with such a revealing design that most people don't pay attention to the rest, but they should, because it's not just about the ridiculously high crit rate and the importance of accuracy, she also represents the importance of being true to yourself. Hey Paul! Now, just to clear some things up before we actually begin, no, I don't think Charlotte is the best unit in Conquest, and no, she's not even my favorite Fire Emblem character. But what I think she is an incredibly cool character that satisfies all the criteria that a good character for this series should meet, such as good unit feel, good character writing, and a good design. While the units above her on my favorites list are there for many reasons, some being partially ironic, if I were grading them strictly by the criteria I've previously stated, Charlotte would definitely be my favorite. But before we get into that, remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you end up enjoying the video. Things like these really keep me motivated to keep making videos about the things I love. With all that being said, let's get started. First, let's cover the term Professor Bopper coined, unit feel. If you want to learn more about it, there's a link to his video on it in the upper right, but what it essentially boils down to is how fun and satisfying a unit generally is to use. For example, if a unit dodges a lot of attacks and crits frequently, they have a good unit feel. However, if they join with terrible bases, mediocre growths, and get one-rounded by basic enemies, they, let's just say might have bad unit feel. Unit feel is not directly correlated to how good a unit is, since even though Est is generally considered not that good in Shadow Dragon, she has high growths and has guaranteed criticals with her triangle attack, so she still feels pretty fun to use. But this is a video about an absolute train wreck of a woman, so let's get back to her. With all that covered, this information begs the question, how does Charlotte feel? Well, I'm glad to say that her initial impression is positively, absolutely, god-awful, for two reasons. First, she has one of the worst possible skills equipped when you get her, Gamble, which decreases her hit by 10 in exchange for 10 crit, which isn't helped by the weapon she comes with, a fairly inaccurate steel axe, which also decreases her speed by 3, leaving her at 10 when she should have a respectable 13, meaning that she can't even double the 6-speed armor knights in the chapter she joins in if you stick to only her initial weapon. This leaves an absolutely terrible first impression, and is the reason I think people say Charlotte is an inaccurate unit, when really she's not once you do this one simple trick. However, you can't even do this in her join chapter as she joins after the battle preps. However, if you bring an axe that isn't terrible with you and trade it to her after she spawns in, she can double those aforementioned armor knights, and even the other enemies on the map if she has a speed pair up. However, once she overcomes the hurdles she faces in her join chapter, I think she's one of the most fun units to use in the entire series. I mean, just look at this. 15 starting strength, which is pretty nice for her join time, 13 speed, which is decent for her join time, and 10 skill, which is pretty standard for accuracy, again when you're not being screwed over by Gamble. However, the real treasure lies within her growths. She has an absolutely monstrous 85% HP, 75% strength, and 65% speed, meaning that most of the level ups you get with her are going to be extremely nice. And if given the proper care, she spirals out of control faster than most other units in the series. Although her defense and res leave a little bit to be desired, her high HP growth combined with the fact she comes with HP plus 5 initially, she can usually take 2 or 3 hits before going down, assuming the enemies she's fighting are physical. Oh yeah, and there's also the fact that once you promote her to Berserker, this can happen. So yeah, that's very, very nice, and I would say having over 100 damage crit procs consistently is a very, very good unit feel. I will admit though, getting above 70% you need to make use of her personal skill, Unmask, which gives her plus 20 crit when fighting women, which is a very rare enemy gender in Conquest. It's very nice against Hinoka though, at least. Consistently getting about 60 though, especially considering how particularly deadly Fate's killer weapons are, isn't half bad, I'd say. If the Berserker class doesn't appeal to your particular tastes though, she also has other interesting innate options. From her base class fighter you can access the hero class upon promotion, which has access to soul. This is important since once you get soul, you can switch over to her innate reclass option, the maid, which has access to daggers. Meaning, of course, Charlotte can become one of the infamous forever soul tanks without ever having to marry anyone. The footage should speak for itself, but I've also covered this build in more detail in a video I've linked in the upper right if you want to check it out. So while she might be a good backpack for Xander, as many others have pointed out, believe me, she's simply too fun to use for me to ever put her in this role. And in both Lunatic playthroughs I've done, I've maxed her out. So overall, despite the rocky first impression she gives players, I think she's one of the most satisfying units to use in the series, and maybe if you ever revisit Conquest, you should give her an extra glance. But I've talked enough about gameplay, let's move on to her character. When we first meet Charlotte, we learn two things. First, that she's an extremely aggressive and powerful person, and that she hides these aspects behind a facade in an attempt to get money and act more ladylike. This is a good hook since after meeting her we're left wondering why she acts this way, which is of course answered in her supports. Before I discuss her characterization in the supports, I should clarify that I'll be covering the bigger picture rather than analyzing each one individually, although I do think they're rather well written. So if you have the chance, you should read them for yourself, with her relationship with Benny being particularly charming. So, one of the reasons she hides behind a facade is so she can marry a rich man and send money home to her family, and while this does showcase how caring Charlotte is, I find the second reason much more interesting. She also acts this way because she doesn't think women should act like how she naturally does, and is afraid she'll scare others off. Now this is actually very relatable to me, as I'm often afraid to share my interests with others as I'm afraid of being rejected. A specific memory I have is when I was talking with a friend back in high school about how I was excited for Sun and Moon, and was consequently teased for liking Pokemon in high school by another person there. Instances like these certainly left an impression, and I'm still a relatively reserved person to this day. Although it is definitely better now since it's extremely easy to meet people with similar interests in college. But still, I don't exactly have a Fire Emblem YouTuber written on my dating profile. Luckily for Charlotte, however, in her supports once she grows close to others, she realizes that they'll accept her for who she is, her strong, unladylike, unhinged self. Now, I know this wasn't a critical analysis on the literal writing quality of her supports that you may have expected when going into the video, but for this video I wanted to express what they meant to me personally more than anything else. Also, it's my video, so die. And once she does unleash her true self, it can lead to very funny situations. However, before we discuss the other half of her character, we should discuss a big factor that leads into it. Finally, of course, there's the most attention-grabbing part of Charlotte. Her design. Now, it's easy to write this off as, hee hee, Fate's fan service, lol. It actually does serve a greater purpose than that. As you may remember, before she grows as a person, one of her primary goals is attracting a rich mate. And while the facade is a part of this, I imagine from Charlotte's perspective, showing off some of her physical attributes is a good way to accomplish this. Wearing an outfit that shows them off and doesn't really imply that she's a warrior. And her not appearing as a warrior makes it all the better and funnier when she makes this face. So yes, while the design can be said to be fan service, I appreciate it more for playing into the fact that this initially fragile and girly looking woman can go absolutely apeshit at any given time. I mean, just look at her hero's art, where she acts all fragile and helpless in her wounded art before looking like she's about to turn all of your bones into dust with one attack. It just shows so much, you know, character. Her voice acting also absolutely plays into this and is an absolute delight.
I'm gonna tear you in half. I will smash you so hard. Did I do that?
So, it's fairly obvious that this design is setting up for the joke where she goes berserk, but this seems to fly over a lot of people's heads, since as previously stated, people just take it at face value. And even if you don't like this look on her, in other official sources like Cypher, she can be seen wearing traditional looks. So, with all that being said, I think it's safe to say that I absolutely love her design without the comments accusing me of acting unwise. You know who you are. So in conclusion, Charlotte is absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, in my opinion, the best character in Fire Emblem. Everything just absolutely hits for me. 10 out of 10 very fun gameplay, 10 out of 10 character that I sympathize with greatly, that's also extremely entertaining, and a 10 out of 10 design that leads to very funny situations. Like I said previously, I like other characters more for reasons outside of Fire Emblem games, but if we're sticking strictly to the games, I love her the most. Of course, most of this is just subjective and just my opinion, and you're free to disagree, but I thought it'd just be nice to make a video about how much I like this character, and maybe change some minds. And of course, remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you ended up enjoying the video. This one was far more personal than my usual videos, especially the part where I delved into my experiences in the character section, so support would be greatly appreciated. It also motivates me to make more scripted videos in general. My Shadow Dragon one didn't do too well. But most importantly, remember to have a lovely day. Bye-bye.
I'm really enjoying your company. I feel like I can be myself around you. It's such a relief.